Right.
What is the trouble with New Orleans in your point of view?
How much time do we have? And things grind to a halt here. There is a tremendous amount of favoritism, nepotism, cronyism.
Yeah.
What are we celebrating? Are we celebrating our crime, our stagnant wages? Is that what we're celebrating? So out of 98 students, 3 parents came to report card night.
Welcome to this week's episode of Leverage You Podcast. I have an amazing intellectual coming on the show today, and anybody who knows me knows that I'm a New Orleans girl through and through. I love my city, born and raised here, and still live just outside the city now. So New Orleans is one of those cities that, we love to celebrate, from the food, the music, the culture, the people. But can our love for New Orleans sometimes make it harder for us to have honest conversations about the things that aren't working? Well, my guest today believes those conversations are necessary. Khefa Nosakhere is a New Orleans native, author, educator, and literary critic. And his newest book has a title that's probably going to make a few New Orleanians stop in their tracks. No Fat Tuesday, The Trouble with New Orleans. This is Khefa's third nonfiction book, and in it, he's taking a deeply personal look at his hometown, examining everything from our culture and economy to education, civic engagement, and what he sees as the distance between celebration and progress. And I wanted to have this conversation because Leverage You is about more than building a platform. It's about understanding what you know, what you've experienced, and what you have to say, and having the courage to use your voice when it matters. I want to welcome Khefa to the show. All right, so Khefa, thank you so much for joining me on the Leverage You podcast. I'm excited for you. It's been a joy working with you over the past couple of weeks and helping to get the message out there about the amazing work you're doing. But I have to ask you this question first because we can't go anywhere other than the title. So, No Fat Tuesday in New Orleans. Those could almost be fighting words. So what is that title and what does it represent beyond Mardi Gras?
One evening, I was driving home, and I was on the corner of South Carrollton and Canal, and I saw this man camping out on the neutral ground for a prime parade spot. And how many times have I seen that in my life as a native of New Orleans, right? But in 2015 and 2016, I taught 10th grade. In both years, I had 98 students. And out of 98 students, 3 parents came to report card night.
Wow.
Out of 98. In 2024, we had a record low voter turnout for the governor's race. Record low.
I remember that.
I could go on, but I think you get the... when Frankie Beverly transitioned, I've never seen that many people on North Claiborne Avenue.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes time to take care of business, No Fat Tuesday.
And then the subtitle is The Trouble with New Orleans. Now, that's a pretty bold declaration from someone who was born and raised here. But let's be real, we don't allow people to talk about New Orleans unless they're from New Orleans. So let's get right to that.
Right.
What is the trouble with New Orleans in your point of view?
How much time do we have?
I know, right? We could go on and on.
I'll try to be direct. Every major city has political corruption, right? New York, Chicago, but the difference is that New York and Chicago have huge economies. We do not. And things grind to a halt here. There is a tremendous amount of favoritism, nepotism, cronyism. Anything that is quote unquote too progressive will not work in New Orleans. And only a native can say this. I was born and raised here, Le Mans des Enfants, Montessori, Belleville Elementary, F.W. Gregory, McMain Magnet. I am from New Orleans through and through, and I have the right to say what I say. And usually, I don't get too much pushback. And when I'm in at dinner parties, when I'm talking to people, this comes up. It's a nagging thing.
Yeah.
What are we celebrating? Are we celebrating our crime, our stagnant wages? Is that what we're celebrating? So, No Fat Tuesday, the trouble with New Orleans, came from my observations, not only as an adult, but I can remember hearing some very disturbing things as a child. I remember hearing adults say, "If I don't get Mardi Gras Day off, I'm going to quit." I I I heard that. I could go on and on, but I think you get my point.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're in a sense you're critiquing your own hometown, but you're rightly positioned to do so. But you're also someone who loves the city. So, what do you still deeply love about New Orleans?
I know how this is going to sound, but uh, New Orleans is the only place where you can get pecan candy. It's the only place where you can get a po' boy. It's a unique, magical city that has legitimate problems that can be addressed if we decide to do so. And so, um, no one is more proud to be from New Orleans than myself, and I represent wherever I go. But we have some problems here. We have some problems. The United States, most urban centers have problems because of what's going on right now with the federal government, but we feel it more because of the relatively small size of our economy and the other cultural and socioeconomic obstacles that are germane to New Orleans.
And one of the ideas that you talk about in your work is, and this caught my attention because there's this tension between this all year round celebration and our progress. Do you believe that New Orleans culture of celebration is actually holding it back?
It is. I tell parents, in order to motivate your children to read, after they complete reading a book or a long newspaper article, monetize it or give them a reward.
Mhm.
I understand our culture. I love our culture, but we have to find the strength to address our incredible problems. So when you're always, in a party mode, what that's just it's very unfortunate.
But I also feel it's not like the locals are always in party mode, but the city invites party mode all year round, right? So New Orleans has created a culture that the entire world consumes: our music, our food, our festivals, our traditions. But are the people who create that culture and preserve that culture benefiting economically from it the way they should? So it supports their everyday life.
So a few years ago, as you are aware, the Mardi Gras Indians began a movement to try to capture um, and preserve the the funding
Mhm.
of those incredible costumes. So, and the same can be said for our musicians. So that's something else that we have to explore. The creative persons, the creative artists of New Orleans should be able to access uh, a greater amount of control and economic benefit from the beauty that they give the world.
Mhm.
And I'd like to talk about the Jazz Fest.
Mhm.
I think 2 years ago, I was talking to this brother that drove the shuttle, and he said he was at the first Jazz Fest.
Yep.
Okay, and it was free.
Mhm.
And what happened over a period of time, as it became more and more popular, I like to what happened to New Orleans in terms of um, the the cultural, our cultural intellectual property. Mainly persons from the East Coast came to New Orleans and packaged it.
Mm-hmm.
And I liken them to the modern day carpetbaggers. And after Katrina, they came down and instituted primarily an all charter school system while we were down. And so that needs to be discussed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The last two mayors that we have had are not New Orleans natives, but I think that we need to have greater action in regards to native New Orleanians, musicians, artists, to enjoy greater control and have a greater economic stake in their art.
Right. Because there's a distinction between culture as a celebration and culture as the economy. Mm-hmm. Can you kind of break down that distinction and what it would look like for New Orleans to better leverage its culture as an economic engine for people who actually live here without it being taken from us and monetized?
So, first of all, it should be a secondary model. One of the things that I think about is we have the ability to give you an example. The reason, and I will answer your question, mm-hmm. the reason that Atlanta had such a great economic miracle is because two men expanded Hartsfield Airport, Maynard Jackson and Andrew Young. Where is Andrew Young from? He's from here.
Okay.
We need industry. We need STEM. We need manufacturing. We need to offer land and whatever other benefits that we can to attract industry, so that we are not solely or primarily independent upon tourism.
Yep.
Being dependent upon tourism is a dangerous thing. You need a high school diploma to go work at a hotel or a bar or something of that nature. And everything that I just named, we're talking $15 to $18 per hour. And I had a professor at USC. His name was Dr. Lloyd Brown, and he was from Jamaica, and he hated Black Americans. But one day he talked about the danger of a tourist-based economy. Mm-hmm. And the danger is twofold. The first danger are low wages. The second danger is that it creates a subservient population. We are servers. Mm-hmm. Okay. And there's a poem that I wrote called Point of Origin that when I tell people where I'm from, you get primarily superficial responses. But what most people don't understand is that New Orleans is one of the most historically cultural cities in the world. Mm-hmm. Pardon me, one of the most historic cities in the world, not in the United States, in the world. And so art, the great Ellis Marcellus said that he believes that culture bubbles up from the streets. Okay, it doesn't come from high on top. It comes from the people, and the people should benefit from it. The people should control it, not someone from New York City or Wisconsin, which is the case if you look at it. So the difference between art as a business and art as what it should be, it's an unfortunate thing, but I think that we can correct it if we have discussions, if we have a plan in order to take back our culture.
Yeah, because what you're talking about is basically we have monetized ourselves. by allowing our culture to be the thing that drives economic growth here in the city. Whereas we should be investing in other industries. And that's where the education piece of this comes in, because you were educated in New Orleans schools, you were an educator here. But when you look at the K through 12 system, what concerns you most about how it is lacking the preparation for the youth to become drivers of other industries here?
So one of the things, believe it or not, one of the things that I'm going to talk about in terms of solutions, you may not believe me. I don't know what happened to junior high schools.
Mm-hmm.
The middle school model is terrible, Casey. 6, 7, and 8. I don't know who thought of that. When I taught in Texas, I was primarily responsible for testing ninth graders. There's no difference between an 8th grader and a 9th grader. 9th graders bring your test scores down and they do all the fighting. So we need to bring back junior high schools. When I was at Gregory, I played football. We had a band. When you left Gregory as going to the 10th grade, you were much better suited to have success in high school. Mm-hmm. Believe it or not, and I taught 8th grade 2 years. And when you look at a charter school system, what happens to Black students is that the curriculum is stripped to a bare minimum. Okay? And if we compare the curriculum to a middle school in inner New Orleans, I'm not going to name names. And if we compare that curriculum to curriculums in, say, Lakeview and those types, you're going to see a difference. Mm-hmm. So if I had the ear of Bessie and the state legislature, the one thing I would work on is bringing back junior high schools.
Mm. So, of course, the book takes time to criticize New Orleans, but what do you think we're getting right? Do you think that there is enough attention brought to the things that are being done right to support the children?
Part of me wants to say yes, but we have to look at you and I are both natives, mm-hmm. So we know things that someone from somewhere else doesn't. So in terms of what we're getting right, I don't see the evidence I'd like to see. In terms of what we're getting right, that was the whole purpose of No Fat Tuesday, and even with No Fat Tuesday, it was supposed to be released 2 years ago, but I ran into this brick wall, you know. And I mean, I understand, you know, I totally understand. One of my high school teammates, when I told him the title, he said, "Yeah, Kef, you're gonna make a lot of friends in New Orleans, you know." But you know, what are we getting right? Well, we have an opportunity. Recently, I've met some very gifted students. One's in the 5th grade, and the other is like I think in the 4th. We have a tremendous opportunity to help our youth. Let's say, for instance, we reinstitute junior high schools. Mm-hmm. The children will benefit from that incredibly. And by the way, with just that one thing, it will have numerous and multiple positive impact on our schools.
But that's not just a small thing, because then you got to look at the facilities and management of teachers and staff and how that shift works. Because right now, facilities are even under attack in New Orleans. So that's mm-hmm. another component that people are trying to hold on to the old, the names of schools, the buildings, all of that too, which makes the transition to junior high structure again possibly harder.
But if you think about the positives,
Mhm.
the middle school model is terrible. I can't say enough bad things
And
about.
for reference, middle school right now is fifth. Is it sixth, seventh, eighth?
Yes, ma'am. Sixth, seventh, and eighth. And then
And you're
once
suggesting seventh, eighth, ninth be a junior.
yes, we need to go back to, if we go back to that model, you will see an incredible positive impact in terms of test scores,
Mhm.
really across the board. Again, ninth graders are not ready for high school. The vast majority of ninth graders are not ready for high schools. So,
And you actually, your event is happening this weekend to launch your book. Congratulations on that. And
thank
then
you.
you have, outside of a panel with yourself, being addressing some of these same questions and topics, you also have two of your former LB Landry students who are participating in that. And what have students like them taught you about what young people in New Orleans need from the adults and the institutions that are making decisions for them?
They need they need practical, good advice. They need to trust adults. That's an issue for them. Teenagers of the 21st century are far more advanced, I would say, than you and I, because you and I grew up in a simpler world.
Yeah.
I've seen my students over the years have shared with me some heartbreaking stories. Students who are homeless, students who, like myself, had to basically raise their younger siblings. Okay. So the feedback that I've received from my students is that they need to know the real deal in terms of, what career should I pursue? How do I find the right mentor? How do I find the funding? How do I deal with my issues at home? How do I deal with the lack of support? I hate to say this, Casey, but in New Orleans, intellectual and academic success is not celebrated the way that it is in other cities, and it's not celebrated in the way that Mardi Gras is. So, and that has to change.
And I, as a mother who has a son now in the education system, I also struggle with how it's structured, in the sense that it's structured in a way to stamp out individuality, stamp out independent learning. It's structured in a way to keep them conform them to a system of obey the rules, do what we say, don't think for yourself, don't have an opinion. And I have a very opinionated 5-year-old who thinks he is the boss and his way goes, but he's also someone who will not who questions when things just don't make sense. That doesn't seem right, mommy. And saying just because I said so is not good enough. And I actually appreciate that about him, because he looks at the world and is inquisitive. He investigates things, and I know that's going to be a strong trait for him. And I would hate to see that be something that is lost because of the current way the education system is framed. It's very outdated. It doesn't prepare them for today's world.
And you just said so much. And by the way, your son is going to be fine because he has two parents. And I know that you've heard the statistics in terms of Black students in single female-headed households. He'll be fine. And you said something that made me think of another fact. If you sent your son, say, to Jesuit, right? Or say you sent him to a boarding school, do you know what you're really paying for? You're not paying for what you think you are, but do you know what you're really paying for?
I would say maybe the structure, and your thought is that you're paying for a high quality education.
Believe it or not, if you send your son, say you send him to Jesuit or you send him away to a boarding school, what you are paying for is a 1 to 15 teacher student ratio. Mm-hmm. That's what you're paying for.
More teachers.
So let's say that you have a teacher with 15 students.
Mm-hmm.
You can put every student in one of three categories: motivated learners, unmotivated learners, and those in the middle. So if you have, say if I had 15 students, let's say 6 of them are highly motivated, okay? And say 4 are in the middle, and say we have 5 that are not motivated. I can work with those 5 if there's a 1 to 15 ratio. But if I have 33 kids, okay. So people don't understand, parents don't understand so much. There's so much that I could tell you to prepare your son to be a Nobel laureate, or, because of what I went through and what I didn't have. Okay. And I had to figure it out, and a big part of what my platform is to help you make your son, like if he wants to be an astronaut, I can tell him he needs to go to Florida State. Mm-hmm. He needs to do, I can tell him, yourself and your husband, whatever he wants to be, I can tell you what you need to do for him.
Yeah.
And the possibility of that goes up dramatically, right? So, you remind me of my why, and in terms of, and you're right, the school system wants workers. The late, great George Carlin said that our school system wants you smart enough to pay taxes, but they don't want you asking questions. I butchered his statement, but he said something like that.
And I actually remember at the end of the school year last year, I asked him, I have him fill out the last day of school thing, and I asked him, what do you want to be when you grow up? Or what do you want to do when you grow up? He says, I want to do nothing. I said, what do you mean? He says, well, what do you do? I said, well, I'm a CEO of my own company. He says, well, I want to do that. In his mind, I do nothing, but I own my own company. I own my time. I own my freedom. And that's what he sees from me in the work that I do. So that is encouraging because it lets me know he wants to be a leader.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
go ahead.
He has a tremendous advantage, again, in terms of his parents, a tremendous advantage. There's an economist, I need to find his name. He's from the East Coast, and he stated that whoever your parents are is the number one predeterminer for your success.
Yeah.
Bill Gates, both of his parents were IP lawyers.
Yeah.
Who are your parents? And as I get older, Casey, I really believe that there's only 2 types of parents. One type is an obstacle, and another, I've met parents who will do anything for the benefit of their children. I really don't believe there's a middle ground. I really don't.
Yeah. There is either you will or you won't. Mm-hmm. And if we continue on the current trajectory that we are now, what would you say you believe New Orleans looks like for that next generation, 10 to 20 years from now?
So to answer your question, I want to say about 10, 15 years ago, there was a story, and when I think about it now, there was not much to it, but the state of Mississippi made some overtures to attract the Saints. And whether we want to admit it or not, if the Saints ever left New Orleans, that would be devastating. And so if we stay on the current trajectory that we're on now, it'll be really bad. It'll be bad. It'll be bad for you, for your family. We need some substantive change in the United States. But we have a lot of work to do. And can we make our lives better? Yes, we can. But we have to have an honest conversation, that this is unacceptable. Can we change and increase the standard of living so that when your son is 18, does he want to stay home or does he want to leave? And when I look at myself, my mother wanted me to go to Tulane. There was no way in hell I was going to go to Tulane. And I jokingly I tell people if there was a college on Saturn, I would have taken astronaut training and I would have done that.
Anywhere. You sound like me. I was ready to go. I went to college in Dallas. I was like, I want to go outside of the state. And
looking back, I'm so glad I did that.
Yeah.
And when you want to make a Louisiana politician want to fight you, tell them what's working somewhere else. They don't want to hear that. I'm a huge sports fan. New Orleans has the NFL and the NBA. Let's say, for instance, we wanted to attract a Major League Baseball team, right? And they would have to we'd have to build a stadium primarily in District E because that's where we have the most land that's just sitting. Okay?
Mm-hmm. That's the New Orleans East area.
Yes, ma'am. So we need to figure out how can we maybe get a manufacturer to how can we get a Porsche plant here? These are the types of things that we need to be thinking about. How do we attract these corporations? How do we make that work? How do we think bigger? I don't hear anybody talking about those things.
Look, and here you're the one who's trying to have these conversations, and they're difficult conversations to have. And there's sometimes that people don't want to have the conversation, and that's probably why we are where we are. And it's also one of the reasons I wanted you to come on the show, because Leverage You is really about recognizing that your experience, your knowledge, and even your perspective all have value. And sometimes leveraging your voice means saying something that people may not necessarily want to hear. So with that, I want to ask you, did you have hesitation or fear about being critiqued? And I'm sure you are being critiqued about the things you're saying, but was that something that lingered with you and made you question whether or not you wanted to put this book out?
Well, let's tackle that, shall we? All my life. So the answer is absolutely not, because I'm a native. Mm-hmm. So no one can say, hey man, you're not from here. You don't know what's going on. It makes me think about Stan's Barbershop on Ferret Street. And to use a sports analogy, I graduated from USC, and Southerners hate USC, right? And we were not in the Southeastern Conference, and we get into it, and I tell them we have the most Heisman winners. We are one of the most premier college brands in the country of all time. So I'm always good with mixing it up a little bit. But to answer your question, whenever I bring up what's not happening here to native New Orleanians, what can they say? They can't say, oh, we're number one in education. Yeah. They can't say we have a robust economy. And of course, the way that I do it, I mean, it is respectful. But you would be surprised at the reception that I get. Usually it's positive. And some of us are embarrassed. But did I have second thoughts? No.
And look, I have this one last question. So when you think about everything you've experienced, everything you've learned, and everything you know today, what is the one thing that you believe you're uniquely positioned to pass on, and how are you leveraging it now?
If I can get the city to reinstitute junior high schools,
that's your legacy.
If I could do that here in New Orleans, mm-hmm. that would be awesome. That would be awesome. I mean,
sounds like you're on the path to getting there.
I could think of other things that I would like to accomplish. I would like to be a mentor for Black boys and Black men between the ages of 15 and 35. because when I taught at Landry, I realized that Black men in their early 30s need mentorship. I would listen to some of the conversations. They need mentors. So if I said that I wanted to be a mentor, maybe on a national scale, and when I was in the high school classroom and I told my kids I'm the oldest of 4 from a single female-headed household, and I couldn't go to my ninth grade graduation because I didn't have the money for a suit. When people meet me, they think that I'm from a 2-parent upper middle class reality when they hear me speak.
Yeah.
Right? But when I tell them, I basically had to raise 3 younger siblings. I can cook. Most of the women I've dated, I'm a better cook than them. I can sew. I could take care of a newborn baby right now. And I'm talking, I went to parent-teacher conferences for my siblings.
Wow.
So when I tell my students that, they're like, wow, I never would think.
Yeah.
That's what I get. What do I want my legacy to be? When I was in high school, adults told me to work hard. And that makes me very upset to this day. What I should have been told was, Khefa, you're a great writer. Go work for Warner Brothers in the mailroom. In 5 years, you'll be the best screenwriter. That's what I should have gotten.
Yeah. It's put you on the path.
I didn't get that. Work hard.
Figure it out. Yeah. Well, I appreciate you spending some time with me, sharing some thoughts and insights on your experience and how you've leveraged yourself to where you are in your career and life. And if anyone wants to know more about you and your work, where should they reach you?
The short answer to that question is they can follow me on Facebook. I believe I'm Professor Nosakhere. They can watch the live stream via Facebook, and I will announce my schedule for the fall.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks for being on the show today, and I look forward to seeing how you progress and seeing where this book takes you.
Thank you so much, Casey.
This has been the Leverage You podcast with Casey Ferrand McGee, a CFM Media podcast production. Because your story is your strategy, and what you've learned, lived, and overcome can become bigger than yourself. So own your story, amplify your voice, and leverage you.